it feels like incredible focus, but not with a feeling that you're not going to get it. There's no fear to it. There's just this blessed immersion in actually the joy and the essence of what it is that you're trying to create. And most of the time, without training, we have no idea that that even exists, in that experience of that ideal performance state or the zone is, it's, I would, this is an odd word, but it's almost euphoric. It's so concentrated in focus. It feels so good on the inside, and it's so immersed in the moment of what's going on.
Welcome to the Curious Equestrian podcast. I'm Teresa, your host for today, and we're thrilled to have Barbra Schulte with us. Barbra is not just a renowned professional cutting horse trainer, but also an inspiring personal performance coach, author, and clinician. Her unique journey from speech pathology to the pinnacle of equestrian excellence, notably in cutting, has culminated in a remarkable career, highlighted by her induction into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame in 2012. Barbra's personal story, marked by triumphs and poignant challenges, including the loss of her son, Zane, adds a deeply human element to her approach to coaching. Today, we'll delve into her innovative techniques on mental toughness in equestrian sports and explore how riders can harness these skills for competitive and personal success. Join us as we uncover the secrets to achieving excellence in the saddle and beyond. Hi, Barbra. Thank you for joining the podcast and welcome.
Hi, Teresa. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time. I wanted to focus today on performance coaching, especially as we're recording in December. So by the time it goes out, it'll be January. So hopefully everyone's thinking about the year ahead at that point. So I think timing really great. But what I thought it'd be good to start off with is just understanding a bit about your career and how it's evolved. And you've had a really successful career. So how that's evolved, how you went from doing a degree in speech pathology and audiology and how that fits in with everything that you do.
Okay. I was born into a family with 400 to 500 horses. So I grew up riding and showing horses. Fast forward, I went undergraduate school, and then I went to graduate school to get a master's degree in speech pathology and audiology. It's interesting. I knew that I always wanted to be in some kind of helping profession. And originally I thought it was physical therapy, but then I found out about all the science and anatomy, and that was not for me. So I went into speech therapy, which is kind of interesting considering that a lot of the work that I do is about communication. So anyway, then I got my master's degree and got married, and I was traveling around working with elderly aphasic patients. I helped students that were at a school for the deaf. But I didn't like really being inside, and I didn't like the confinement of that. About that time, my husband said, because he was watching all that different members of my family did with the horses, "Do you know how to do this?" And I said, "Yes." So that's the short story of how I got back into training and showing horses. So then I was showing in the open division. I always have been interested at or in the highest levels of things, not because I think that's any better or any worse. It was just where my attraction has been. And so I started right off going to the largest cutting horse shows. And I quickly realized that there was something about the highest level competitors, and I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that the same people, not necessarily the same horses, always won. And they may or may not have been riding the quote unquote best horses. That led me to study at the Human Performance Institute in Orlando, Florida, where they train Olympic and professional athletes. based on one of those synchronicities of somebody telling me about it, and that changed my life, and I found my true passion of, um, really seeking to understand what drives human potential, and also what at that time, and still now, but originally it was like, how do you get that done? How can you be your best when you're, quote, unquote, "under pressure" at a competition? So, that's the short story of how I got to where I am.
Yeah. And so when you were studying then, had you taken a complete break from horses and then went back into it? Were you still riding at that point?
When I was growing up, there was no real choice about if we would compete or not, or train. We had a string of horses trained and to show. And a very, eclectic person. I like a lot of different kinds of things, and so I when I went to college, I really wanted to take a little bit of a break from, what from all of that, but I couldn't in undergraduate school because I was still beholden to my family, so I was still going home and riding and showing on the weekends. But then after that, I did take a break. That's when I went to graduate school and did the speech therapy thing. But then that wasn't it either, and for the reasons I said about being inside, and
Yeah.
I missed the horses. I missed just the whole Western way of life that I had grown up with, and so I just and my husband he really wanted to do the horses, and I said, "Sure, let's go. Let's do it."
Yeah.
And so I did take a little bit of a break.
Um, One of the things that you teach is mental toughness. Can you tell us a bit
Mm,
about what that is, how it helps people overcome, how it's helped you overcome challenges, how it can help other people overcome challenges?
sure. The
The
essence
essence.
of it and the research that they did showed that the Olympians or the high performance athletes who did their very best consistently, those athletes had the ability in any situation, in any environment, no matter what was going on around them, no matter what had just happened at home, argument with the spouse, or the water line just broke, or they were late, or whatever it was, where they went into a bit of a frenzy, maybe, or maybe they were just tired. Just when they weren't feeling at their best, quote unquote, naturally, that they had the ability, unlike the lower performing athletes, to get into what's called a zone, or it was called the ideal performance state. And it's known by a combination of emotions of feeling like slow on the inside, but yet enthusiastic, and the ability to be adaptable and flexible. And I would say to really get into not only the best of their technical level performance, but the energy of it. So, like with a horse, for example, it would be in reining, it would be the ability to really feel and go for and help your horse accomplish a fast circle and then come back to a slow circle. And that is a state that's measurable in mind by brain waves, and body by heart rate, by the sweat on or not, by muscle tension, by heart rates. And so they did a lot of research about that. But the way that you accomplish that is by what you do with your body, and then how you think with your mind, because the mind body emotions are really, they're all one. So if we go off and get either really nervous or worry about what other people think, it basically shuts down our ability, our breathing, our vision, on a horse, our ability to feel our horse because of how our nervous system works.
Mhm.
So it was learning that if I wanted to be my best in the show arena, I had to have a really clear vision of what I wanted to go accomplish, and then where I needed to be mentally, physically, emotionally, where my horse needed to be, have a plan to bring us there, and then and to get into that state of it feels like confidence. It feels like incredible focus, but not with a feeling that you're not gonna get it. There's no fear to it. There's just this blessed immersion in the actually the joy and the essence of what it is that you're trying to create. And most of the time, without training, we have no idea that that even exists in that experience of that ideal performance state or the zone is it's I would this is an odd word, but it's almost euphoric. It's so concentrated in focus. It
Mhm.
feels so good on the inside, and it's so immersed in the moment of what's going on. And you have to be or I had to be trained to understand that it is something that it's something that we can call up no matter what's really going on. And if we don't, especially under pressure, then we'll perform at a lower level than we are really capable of. And for me personally, I learned all about all these skills. And then I realized that I could use it in my everyday life. And then when I had a tragedy in my life, like losing our son, Zane, I without any coaching from anybody, I realized that I had to rest, and I utilized the principle of that. And so now the it's obviously it's not just something that we use when we go to a competition, but it can be the principles. There are so many wonderful principles that we can utilize just to live lives where we are aware, where we respond without reacting, where we can, like with a horse, we can get still and a horse is comfortable and we can have the ability maybe to access our intuition a bit more. And so there's a lot of expansive work that's being done by a lot of people or a lot of work being taught that I had the privilege and the honor to cultivate this for years in a show situation, and, I'm delighted, and I would shout from the rooftops about how incredible it is because of the impact of the access it gives you to doing your best, um, practicing well, riding well. It doesn't have to be just at a show, just anytime with your horse.
Yeah. So as you were talking, I was going to ask when they were doing those studies on athletes, from your own experience. So is it something that some people are just lucky enough to be born with that ability, or is it a learned behavior?
No, I did not have a natural ability. I don't think it's a natural talent. I think it's much more, has to do with environmental, with beliefs. I did have and because we did show horses so much when I was growing up, and my father was a great horseman, and he was also a tough dad, and by tough dad, I mean he expected that we would do well, and if we didn't do well, we had to dig down into, was our horse not prepared? Did we not ride well in the arena? He didn't have it broken down the way that I understand it now, but I think because of that expectation of excellence when I was growing up, that that I learned it environmentally, but also I think that we all have an inner voice that has believed things that we've been told or our culture has told us that limit us. And so there's always work to be done to, no matter our age, to access this incredible unlimited potential that we have. And so much of it depends on what we say to ourselves. And that is a part of what I teach and part of what it's a technique called scripting, which means that you plan, like if you go into a competitive arena, you instead of allowing your mind to just go wild, which it doesn't go in such great places all the time, you actually train it like you have an angel on your shoulder or the best coach in the world is sitting there talking to you, but actually you've just planned what it is and practiced it so that you're coaching yourself the whole time. But it also spills into our everyday life because that vision that we have of ourselves and if we're worthy, if we're enough, what we can accomplish, and seeing ourselves doing that or not has so much say over what actually happens in our lives.
And what are the kind of common things that you see equestrians struggling with, whether it's nerves in the show rear or just generally what do you
Mhm.
see them struggling with and how have you seen these techniques help
I
them?
think that the two biggest things are nerves and then a comparison to other people or a fear of people being around and the fear of what they're going to think of us. And usually that comparison in our heart, in our mind, but also in our heart translates to you're not as good as she is, or your horse isn't as good as her horse. Or if we allow ourselves to think, obviously I have the best horse and obviously I'm a better rider. That's a very disempowering thing also because we're getting our affirmation from the outside. Because the essence of this internal focus and managing our energy is doing everything that we can in each moment to be to bring out the best of ourselves and our horse and to be responsive in the most positive way possible if mistakes happen or that sort of thing. And when we're in a comparison mode, that's our mind our mind is in that, and we're not even feeling our horse or sensing our horse. So I would say that in my experience, those are the two biggest things, the nerves and then the fear of what other people think. And also in a competitive sense, in the competitive world, a fear of the results, focusing on the outcome. I really need to win this in order for me to impress my client, get the year end award, whatever it may be, which again takes you away from your job. And the way that the techniques or the principles and the methods of this kind of work is that we know we start with knowing what the experience is, what the feeling is of being in the zone, and if somebody can't really imagine what that might be like, they can take some other um, experience in their life that they feel really super confident in. And let's just say that they play the piano and they're just crazy about playing the piano or an artist or anything, doesn't matter. And that they have the ability to just go to their sweet spot and do their thing. And it feels like they're at home within. And if something, like let's say something would happen, just prior to them doing that, but they still could go to that place. That's exactly the same feeling, the same experience that we're talking about. So once someone understands that this kind of sense of a calm, focused, non-judgmental immersion in the moment exists, then one way to do it is we can sense when we're not in that place by how we're feeling in our body. Like when we're feeling nervous, we feel we might throw up or like we feel really tense in our body. So we can sense that. Obviously, we might notice, we become self aware. We might notice when these thoughts are going a little crazy in our heads. So the first step is to become aware that you're not there. And then, depending upon what resonates, like the tools to get someone to that place are what they do with their body, which is breathing, which is an open posture, which is eyes up. On a horse, it's the feeling of a horse moving our seat in the saddle. Become that part of our body is very grounded in a sense of calmness, and we get more out of our mind. We're not so much here, and we're more in feeling our body, which when we ride a horse, we need to be responsive to our horse. So those are some physical tools, but that openness and eyes up and breathing and body posture and connection to your seat are all great ways. And then from the mind part, we want our mind to serve our what we're trying to accomplish instead of our mind going wild with who's there and, you know, your horse isn't good at that and you really mess up in this. So we have to get our mind to serve what it is we want to do. And so we do that by um, acknowledging, by being aware that we're nervous, say, for example. And someone could start talking to themselves like they would a close friend, like Teresa. If you were really nervous, I might walk over to you and put my hand on your back and say, take a breath. You know that you are really connected to your horse, and you know that you're a good rider, and you know you're supposed to be here. So I don't that's what I would say to a good friend. I wouldn't say, "Teresa, you're a jerk, and obviously you don't know how to ride. You're gonna
Yeah, or just
screw
pull
up,"
yourself
you
together and
know?
get on with it.
Yeah, you didn't just remember what you did last time, that wasn't I wouldn't go over and say that to you.
Yeah.
I would gently bring you back to the essence of what you were about to accomplish. I would encourage you that you had the skills, and whatever you didn't know or whatever situation came up that might be new, that you could handle it and just keep breathing and keep your eyes up and feel your seat and stay slow on the inside by breathing. And so I would I'd be training, or we want to train that inner voice to be like the kindest, most encouraging. It can be very specific about what you need to do. Coach, because here's the thing, that inner voice is the most important coach that we'll ever have, because that inner voice is what's talking to us constantly. whether we're aware of it or not. So it's combining, I think of it as physical tools, body tools, and I think of it as mind tools. And then combining, in my coaching, I help people find what combination resonates with them, like what they need, where their challenges are, and if they like scripting, if they like visualizing, like some people are not so wordy. They just could get, like, maybe they could call up a time in their mind, or I could suggest to you, Teresa, I want you to think about a time when you just had the most beautiful ride on your horse. And it might be at home, it might have been at a show. And just to remind you that you can do that, whatever came to life for you, whether it was focus or how you talked to yourself or how you warmed your horse up or whatever it was, that you have the ability to recreate that and that you can and that you're good at it. So it's really a combination of using our minds the way we want them to go and also our bodies.
So really, we should be thinking about training our mind as much as we think about training our horse.
Right. Well, I think we need to think about both because getting into a state of being in the moment and having a plan and trusting what we do know and also trusting that what we don't know, that we'll probably make a great choice, but if we don't, that we'll learn from it. That kind of self-coaching, along with being very clear about what we do know and what we want to happen, allows us to be responsive because riding a horse is I'm have a plan and I ask my horse to do something, and hopefully I've asked them to do something they know, and I've asked them in a way that they understand, and either they do it and then I respond accordingly or they don't, so it's this writing is really this constant exchange of communication, just like you and I are having. It's really a conversation back and forth. So we need to know what we need to do with our horses and simultaneously be able to stay in this focused state so that we don't just all of a sudden get mad or give up or get anxious, whatever it is, because we'll block our ability to do what we really want to do. So,
And do you think we attach too much self-worth and even the worth of our horse on rosettes, buckles, trophies? And does that
mm,
negatively impact the way that self-talk?
absolutely. And that's a really great question. So, when we set a goal, they're called outcome goals. There's two kinds. One's called outcome. That would be like, I'm going to win the year end trophy in this class. And, I'm going to go to however many shows. And my goal is that I want to be the year end champion. And that might excite someone who loves to compete and really wants to do well. The challenges or the path to that is to set what's called the performance goals, which are oh, before I say that, sorry. When you set an outcome goal to be the year-end champion, we have zero control over if we're going to do that or not, because we don't know if our horse is going to stay sound. Hopefully he or she does. We don't know what the other competitors are going to do. We don't know if we might get ill or whatever it is. We can't directly control that, but it makes us excited. It's like, yes, I'm going to go. Let's go. if I'm going to reach my goal, I better go ride tonight, better get my horse in shape, better get myself in shape. So that's the purpose of outcome goals. They're exciting and they motivate us. But the challenge with outcome goals is that we don't have control of them. So if we focus on something that we have no control of, which is the prize of the rosette or the trophy or the year-end award, if we focus on that, it actually takes us away from our job. If we allow it, like in other words, if you say you go to the last show and that show determines if you make it, and the other competitor that you're going against is at that show. If I go to the show focused on the other competitor, have to results instead of my job, then I will likely sabotage myself because I won't be in that immersion of my job, of the essence of the ride, moment to moment. I'll be thinking about, okay, I wonder what the judge thinks. Oh, that wasn't perfect. Oh, there we go. I probably am not going to get it now. Those kinds of things. So instead, in order to go for the year-end award, we're going to allow that to get us excited and not miss practice times or whatever because we need them. But when we practice or when we go to a show, what we want to focus on are the things that we can do during that practice session that we need to do to keep working on and that we can do, not too far out because by too far out, not too advanced if it's a skill that we don't really know how to do yet. But just on the next step, let's just say your horse is, or I as a rider was inconsistent with getting the kind of halt or the kind of stop that I wanted to get and to have my horse relaxed when I stop. In setting performance goals for the next practice, I would need to think about, okay, now what is it that I need to do that I can control my breathing, my eyes, how I sit, don't be too fast with the reins, whatever it is that would get that halt, that stop, so that we can just keep building on. They're called hard skills, and hard skills are the things that you can control and the things that we need to do that make us good riders, both good riders and also appropriately so for our sport. It's challenging because when we're driven to do well, but we take our affirmation that we're on the right track only by the outcome, we're really destined to take a longer journey. But when we say, I'm going for it, but this is what I need to do this time, and we judge our success on if we did it and how we did it and what we need to do next time, those small steps are like stepping stones that will take us to the end goal. And they are the steps that we have control of. We don't have control of the outcome, but we have all kinds of control of the ride that we have on that day. And that's challenging because to release control of the outcome goal in favor of focusing on what we can control is counterproductive because we get to be so focused on the outcome.
And applying all of this, how does that affect people's relationship with their horses? Do you think, do people notice? I guess it depends on the person, whether they're very competition focused or whether having a good relationship with the horse is part of what they value. So how
Mm.
does this help with your kind of partnership with your horse?
That that question is a great question and very dear to me now because, and I'll answer it in just a second, but all of the years that I was growing up and working on the horses on our family farm and marketing them. And then as a professional cutting horse trainer, where everything has to do with the outcome, if I get good horses is dependent upon the results in the show. If owners think that I am a good enough trainer and competitor to warrant their, prize horse. So when I'm thinking about the outcome goals, typically, and I see this all the time, I'm thinking that I want my horse to do something. I'm not thinking that I'm going to make sure it just depends on the person. But it's easy to just think, oh, he or she was quote unquote good today, or they have these quirks and they always do that, and they're not the right competition horse for me, all those things. But to me, what I admire the most and ascribe to is what I think that most amateur and non-pro riders want, and that is a great relationship with their horse. And they love being with the horse, love riding, love putting the pieces of the puzzle together in their discipline. And I I don't just think, I know that we can build a horse's confidence and we can understand what makes a horse tick and key into that as we keep um, progressing in the skill development for a certain discipline and the competitive development. Because what happens, and it depends on the horse, that if we're not aware of the horse, like horses are prey animals. They're very, they know exactly if we're with them or not. And depending upon their personality and their athletic ability and their kind of interests, if you will, their kind of innate talent and desire, like I do cow work, those horses are either full of cow, like a dog would be full of, interested in a bird. You know, when their rider just demands and they don't even notice that maybe they're uncomfortable about something. Well, if they're not, depending upon how long that's been going on, they shut down. They might keep doing things, but it's not even fear. Sometimes it's fearful that they're going to be punished and hurt, but often it's just, I'm just going to go through the motions. She doesn't see me, she doesn't hear me, she doesn't, release the reins consistently, and they just what they end up doing is just some level of performance, and that's it. Horses that are highly, um, driven and interested and talented, again, a horse with a lot of cow, sometimes they'll just override that because they're so, like, naturally keen. But I think a lot of horses get trained, and depending upon their training and the sensitivity of the trainer, they either come out the other side intact with this confidence and uh, ease. Horses want ease and comfort. Their ease about that this my rider is going to notice me. They're going to release me when I get really soft, and or they just do their job and they'd rather be somewhere else. So I think that's a really interesting question and a really important one, and one that I think is the essence of why we ride and is just coming to light now. And people like Warwick Schiller and other people who talk a lot about the relationship with a horse, because it used to be thinking about a relationship with a horse was like you were feeding them cookies, and so because of that, they were nibbling all over you and they might start biting. But that's not really a great relationship either. I don't want somebody just, like, walking up and hugging me all the time. Like, we had this understanding of mutual respect and I and trust. Horses really When horses trust, they will jump over the moon. When they don't trust, they'll shut down and they'll do their best, or they might get naughty because they can't find the answer. So I think that what we who love horses and who want a relationship with a horse and not just to be acknowledged in the show arena because we're so good, that with study that they can discover that the best relationships with a horse that are like really truly one-on-one with a horse are riders who approach horses, even if it's a horse they don't know, from the sense of, where the horse is and acknowledging the horse and can find both. And that's what I think is fabulous.
Definitely. So, kind of to round off this discussion, as we think about moving into 2024, what would your advice be for our listeners that are, hopefully sitting down and thinking about their year ahead, whether they're a competitive rider or whether they're a leisure rider? What's your advice for sitting down and setting those goals for the year?
Mm. I think, of course, this is from the interest of where I hail from, but it's not just my interest, a lot of people. So I'm not talking about this from my perspective, but what I was talking about, exploring that whole idea of the mind, body, emotional state and how to cultivate it. Because as I've been doing it for years, and it's like writing skills. It's like an onion that you keep discovering more and you keep discovering more. And there's so much benefit and carryover and joy that can spill over to your everyday life. And so to really explore that, and there are, like, I do that work, Jane Pike does that work. There are a lot of really awesome people. Warwick does that work, and we all do it in different ways. But I think that's so important because, again, it allows us to bring out our best in whatever we do and keep learning and keep experiencing all kinds of things. The second thing is that I would explore what I was talking about, a relationship with a horse, and what are the principles of that? What is the foundation of that? Like studying the prey nature of a horse and studying how to build a relationship of trust with a horse. Like, aside from just getting on them and going, what is it that makes a horse tick? And how do we plug into that? And then keep developing horsemanship skills, which of course is like a big word that is used a lot and has been used forever. But in this sense, I mean, like, how do we build a true communication? Like, how can we feel our horse? And which is all completely tied in to what I was talking about earlier with getting into that place where you're focused and engaged, but you're not ahead of the moment. And seeing those two things as equal parts, I don't know how I would really measure it, but because I think they build. In fact, I'm doing a whole webinar series on this tomorrow. How they build on each other, your inner core, your value of yourself, your belief in yourself, to your ability to tap into that place where you're calm and non-judgmental, or you're set, and then what it takes to develop a relationship with the horse, and then feel and connection, and then you apply those with that great foundation. You apply that to learning your discipline. What most people do is they go for the discipline, which I understand because that's what attracts them. If they wanna be a jumper, they wanna be a trail rider, and we need discipline-specific skills. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that doing a lot of the work that I just talked about, I think is work that we have to seek out for ourselves. It's not the typical trainer or the people around you because they're telling you how to hold your feet, how to hold the reins, what to do, which again is important. But these other things are what allow those things to happen accurately and with ease and to keep growing. So I would just, to answer your question, I would think of it in your mind as there's personal growth, there's inner the regulation of your internal state when you ride. Then there's understanding the nature of a horse. Then there's developing feel and connection. And then there's discipline specific skills.
Some of those are really hard to measure. They're very personal things. It's not, I achieved a 10-yard slide or jumped a 10-foot fence. I guess only you know whether you got there or not.
One thing that is possible to do is the way that you can quantify it, which is personal, but let's just say that you're working on your nerves you're going to clinic. A lot of your friends are going to be there, and some people maybe a little further down the experience road with as far as their riding skills and as far as their horse's ability. And so you maybe think, if I was going to rate myself on my ability to stay in my own lane and stay focused on my horse and keep breathing and do my best and not be concerned about them, if I was going to rate that, I would put myself on like a 2 on a scale of 1 to 5. But when I go to the clinic, I'm going to breathe. First of all, I'm going to have a clear plan in my mind. I'm going to be very aware when I start to get fired up. And that's a real professional term. And I'm going to breathe and I'm going to talk to myself. And I'm at the end of the clinic, I'm going to think back and I'm going to rate how I did that. And so so that has nothing to do with anybody else, but that's what I was saying, that these skills that we're talking about are so personal. But you can keep improving it in a step-by-step way.
Well, thank you. I think that's been really timely for our audience, and the time we'll put this out, and I hope it helps people set themselves up for whatever they consider success to be in 2024.
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your podcast.